Good evening, everybody, and welcome to an impromptu Saturday evening edition of the news. This episode is called The Handled News, the reasons for which will become clear in a moment. I hope you're all doing well. I hope everybody has been enjoying their weekend hitherto. If you're not working, of course, then that makes things even easier. I'm doing all right, thank you very much. Been quite busy very recently. I'm not going to go into too much detail because there's some personal matters that need to be attended to, but let's just say it's time consuming and it involves interacting with authorities and let's say the infrastructure that we have at our disposal. And yeah, I'm just gonna have to deal with things. It's basically to do with me having to find a new place to live. The matters aren't really that complicated, but they're in danger of being made complicated. So I need to keep my eye on that. But like I said, I'm not going to divulge too much here about what it's all about. I just all I can do is stay on top of things and communicate and see what happens and keep the pressure on. But that's another story. And far be it from me to be positioning myself into a position of victimhood or anything like that. I'm not. These things happen in life. But I'm now going to see if what's written on the tin is actually what's inside it. So if you're allegedly entitled to certain support or help due to certain reasons, then let's just see if that proof is not only in the pudding, but if the eating, or the proof is in the eating of that pudding, as it were, without me trying to get too clever with sayings. Anyway, but there we go. That was the last week or so. I've been a bit busy with paperwork and phone calls and things like that, waiting in queue. I think you all know the drill by now. When you phone up somewhere, you're being asked by a computerized voice why you haven't tried the online alternative. And then straight after that, you're getting told that there are an unusual high number of calls, high volume number of calls, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And then straight after that, so we're already 3.5 minutes, 4 minutes into all these computerized voices, after you've decided which language you want, then will cometh another voice reminding you to behave correctly, and there is a zero tolerance policy towards bad behavior on the phone and aggressive behavior, etc., etc. So you're already positioned by them before you've even started a conversation with whoever it is you're trying to interact with and get things done with, as it were. So that is a real challenge and a real test in patience, not through any feeling of expectancy on my part, and not for any feeling of entitlement on my part either. I understand that you have to put work into things for you to get things out of it. That's how things work in life. I can speak from experience in other things. Those who know. Again, not the platform to be blurting out about my private stuff, but yeah. Anyway, I thought I'd just give a little insight into that. That's what's going on at the moment, and so there's all that dealing with authorities and stuff like that, blah, 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 that has to be dealt with. And it highlights certain issues. I'll give an example. We don't have a housing problem in this country, in the UK, at all. We have an affordability problem, not a housing problem. There are plenty of spaces and there is lots of accommodation available. Only it's very difficult to pay for. Never mind get yourself in the door, as it were, by way of 3 months in advance and deposits. And nowadays they also want all sorts of things like guarantors and goodness knows what else, size of your feet, how often you trim your toenails, and whether you get your ear syringe regularly or not. You know what I mean? So it's pretty tedious stuff. That's once you've got to that stage. But I'm still at the preliminary stage at the moment, but I have 28 days to sort it. And that all started on the 9th of February. So I'm in the thick of that. Anyway, I've harped far too long on that. Just having a quick look down. Right, so actually it is a little bit connected. I'm just looking at the clock to see if I'm in good time. I'm in plenty of time. It is connected actually with what I'm going to talk about, because I was going to attend a march today that took place in Oxford, and it was, amongst other things, to raise awareness and have a bit of a moan and a whinge about the whole 15-minute city things and all that sort of stuff, blah, blah. I was going to go there for other reasons, and that was to network and reconnect with a couple of people that I haven't been in touch with for a while and all that sort of thing. But unfortunately, it didn't work out because I had my mind occupied on other things, and I can't just be keeping myself a Saturday free when who knows what might happen, you know. But one thing I found very interesting, having followed a little bit of it online here or there when I had a bit of time, one place to check out is a lady called Citizen Sid. Check out her channel. She's very good. I had the pleasure of meeting her when I was on the Globe Light Tour last year in Norwich, on our Norwich leg. She was there with a few other people, including, I do believe it was Kelly or Keely. I hope I'm not getting that. It's one of those two names I've forgotten now. I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, go and check her out. She does a lot of good stuff. And, you know, she's on the ball with a lot of things, and tedious and all that sort of stuff. Some good citizens journalism going on there. We need more of that. Yeah, anyway, so I followed a little bit through what she was showing, and also looked on a few other places, and also kept my eye out on A, whether mainstream were mentioning anything of it at all. Well, they would do, it's in Oxford. And B, how they would present it. And it was quite interesting because this ties in nicely with the narratives that I was mentioning in my last news segment about how it's all about narratives, and it's all about forming and keeping people's perceptions in certain, you know, positioned in certain ways. And you have to maintain that, of course, by throwing things out there all the time. Repetitiveness is key in all of that. And today they had somebody there who was demonstrating, and instead of talking about what, you know, he was demonstrating for and all that, he spent a good minute making it important for all the viewers to know that he, in his words, like to distance myself from anti-vaxxers and climate change deniers. Wow. So, gets you thinking immediately. Now, I have had my personal experiences with the media, right? And if you don't know what I'm on about, then just check out my channel and have a look at some videos from about 2 years ago, roughly. And you can see how the media and the police, for example, are in cahoots. Certainly with certain things they have to be. I get that. I understand how it works. But sometimes unnecessarily so as well, of course, from our perspective, when you're trying to get a message out that's not harmful to people. It's just offering people a different perspective on things that they may not have thought about, you know, originally. But anyway, I found it quite interesting that the BBC would then have somebody in front of the camera talking about how he's there for the 15-minute city thing, but definitely not an anti-vaxxer, whatever one of those is, and definitely not a climate change denier, whatever one of those is. No idea. Don't know. Why doesn't he just say critical thinkers? But then that would exclude himself from that demo, wouldn't it? So, yeah, a bit of a conundrum when you want to cherry pick your causes and you're trying to stick with the safe ones, but then you realise, ooh, they're not real causes, and then you're sort of stuck. But then you want to be rebellious as well and all that. Yeah, it's the old Oxford, Cambridge thing going on there, isn't it? So detached from reality. But anyway, I thought that was very, very interesting. That they were eager to put that narrative out as opposed to talking about what they were really there for. So there you go. Little nuggets like that they like to drop in that go on in the background while you're having your lunch or your whatever it is you're doing. And subliminally and subconsciously those messages stay in there with the general public. They just do. Keep those divisions up as well. Very important, you know. Anyway. So there we have it, just an example of how to bolster narratives. Another thing I wanted to address, and I haven't spoken about this for a while, but I'm going to because it's been mentioned to me now on a few occasions, and so I'm going to address it. And that is the whole question of depopulation. Now that might sound a bit random and one heck of a shoot off on a tangent there from what I was just talking about. And it is a little bit, but it's just the topic that was on my mind because it's, like I said, I've been approached on it a few times now. And it ties in with the whole old world buildings thing. And anybody who's looked at this topic a bit closer will understand that we're not just talking about old buildings here, but we're essentially talking about civilizations past and this one that we're part of. And certainly for me, and I can only talk for myself, I'm thinking about, well, when did our civilization as we know it even start, even begin? Because the biggest question for me that overrides everything else is, how did we as a race, or race is not even the right word, species, whatever, even come to exist in the first place? And I'm not going to even entertain the whole Big Bang thing or evolution, the one-celled amoeba via tortoises and God knows what else, giraffes, apes, then we ended up as humans, or something out of nothing, Big Bang, or Adam and Eve, or whatever the different various theories there are out there. But they're all obviously off the mark, clearly, because there's something more to the truth than what we're told. Because one thing is for sure, we have been lied to on massive scale, on so many things, including the shape of the earth. I'm no longer embarrassed to talk about it like that because I've accepted that ridicule is part of the pushback that you're going to get from people who are ignorant, either through by design, ignorant, want to be, or just haven't got the time to look themselves, and that's that. But anyway, the population thing, and we were talking about depopulation, and I was talking about, according to the official, a few of you might know this story already. I've spoken to a few people about this already in the past, but according to the official books, the world population was at around 1 billion people in the year 1900. So bear that in mind. Since 1900 to this day is 123 years. It's supposed to have exploded by 7 billion. We're supposed to have a population of hitting very quickly the 8 billion mark, allegedly, apparently. Don't know who's gone around counting them, but maybe it's those satellite images. The ones that get shot down. So 8 billion. So that says that in the last 123 years, our population has exploded by 7 billion people, yet for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years preceding the year 1900, we only managed to make it up to 1 billion in population. And the argument that's often thrown at me, not that I'm arguing any case here, I'm just questioning the narrative because I think we always should. But my point is, or the argument that's thrown at me, I should say, is, well, transport kicked in. The introduction of rail transport, and then later on in the 20th century, flight, aviation, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, fine. That does not mean to say, though, that populations then jumped on the first train that got built ever and went around the country bonking. That didn't happen. And they certainly didn't jump on cruises and do the same thing. And they certainly didn't do it on planes, because a lot of people, it was definitely a middle class thing to be able to fly up until, I would say, probably the late 80s, mid 90s. Probably, but I don't know, yeah. And if you wanted to fly, let's say, from Germany to England back in the early 90s, for example, chances are you would fly Lufthansa or British Airways. So it's an expensive undertaking, is the point I'm making. Cheap flights and stuff are only a thing of the last 20, 30 years, really. Before then, you were always travelling as cheaply as you possibly could. I mean, my dad was in the army for over 20 years, and when we used to visit England from Germany or vice versa, depending on where we were stationed, we'd always opt for the ferry because it was always it was the most competitive form of transport. So that raises a lot of questions about, well, populations. Yes, we have the introduction of transportation and everything else, but that still doesn't make for people getting more active, beneath the sheets. Just putting it out there, which of course leads straight away automatically to then the reasoning behind the shifting of millions of people under the guise of wars or droughts or natural catastrophes, shall we say. We'll put natural in inverted commas with a very, very small n. Anyway, so I think that's just a thing worth looking at and worth thinking about, because that does not make sense. It just doesn't. Communities would have been communities. You would have still had to somehow, you know what I mean? The only way you were going to do anything is by shifting people around. And the way to do that and move people around in a big way is through events happening. You know what I mean? They're not all going to queue up on the bus for a bus, are they? You need something happening to be able to then justify shifting big swathes of people. An example would be Operation Pied Piper, what a beautiful name to give it, in World War II, which is when they moved the children from the cities into the countrysides in England to prevent them from being affected by the severe bombing. And that leads us then on to other questions about X, Y, Z, which is a story for another day. But anyway, it's worth thinking about that topic, I think. It's worth looking at more closely. Yet again, I think it ties in very nicely with the overall lie, which is that our history is total and utter BS, total nonsense. You know, but again, like I say, that's another story. So there we go. Wanted to mention that before I forget. I made a bit of a point of addressing that at some point this weekend, and I felt like doing it this evening, so there we have it. Moving on from that, I wanted to also just mention quickly that Ian Lee, he had been in touch with me recently. As you know, Ian and a chap called Scott, they run the Flat Earth, I'll get my words out, meetup in Swanage every month, and I sort of mention it when I put these videos out normally when I get around to doing them. Anyway, the Flat Earth meetup will continue, but there are moves being made to have it moved to another location, preferably Bournemouth, which of course suits me down to the wire because that's where I live. But not for that reason. I think it would make sense because it's a more central place to get to for people who are outside of this region of the South Coast. I think it's a good hub, if you like. So the reason why I'm announcing or mentioning that / announcing it is because I haven't found a location yet, because of course I've been busy with one or two other things that I've mentioned in the outset of this video. But we will be looking for a location in the Bournemouth area very soon. So if anybody watches this video and happens to hear me making this announcement, if you managed to make it this far into the video, I know Larry behind me is falling asleep. He likes to sleep with his eyes open, you see. I know. Yeah, then let us know if anybody has any ideas or knows of somebody who knows somebody, you know, from the gastronomical sector or any other for that matter. And then please do drop me a line. Let me know. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Instagram under Sven Pillay. I'm on Facebook under the same name. And I'm just thinking, what else am I on? Not too sure. Whatever it is, it's obviously not good enough. Boom, boom. Anyway, right. So yeah, let us know. Get in touch with me. Send me an email as well. All lowercase, Sven, MAPillay@mail.com. But I'll leave a description. I'll leave a link. Not even a link. I'll leave some notes in the description below. And then you can contact me at your leisure, if you so please. All right. On that note, I would like to say thank you for looking in, listening in. I hope your weekend continues to be good if it is, or betters itself into good if it is not. And I hope you all enter the week well next week. My daughter turns 13 on Monday. So I've been thinking about that a lot the last few days as well. When we talk about time flying, blimey. Anyway, okay, on that note, it's good night from him. He's happy, as Larry. And it's good night from me. And I'll see you all soon. But some of you, of course, sooner. See you then. Take care. Ta-ta for now. Bye-bye.